just got back from South Carolina, and I had a chance to, well, I just did a class there, and I had a chance to coach all levels. I mean, from brand new shooter to, you know, first time gun owner, but had some pretty decent skills, had already been under some tutelage of some other people, but not with competition. Zero competition experience, but wanting to get into competition. And usually, usually I vet those things. Somehow I didn't catch that one. And the coolest part was she was a girl. So, I mean, it was literally, I think 2 days after I made that ladies video, a girl signed up, or had been signed up for my class, and I didn't even realize it. So, always interesting when it's like the stars aligned right there to have a girl come to my class right after I talked about don't mansplain. So it was kind of funny. But I had every level you could imagine in this class. I had grandmasters, I had middle of the road shooters like A's and B's, some C-class shooters, and I had, I think it was 3 shooters that were brand spanking new. I had one shooter, Olivia was her name. She had never shot a match before. Another gentleman named Adam had never shot a match before. He had, you know, gun experience. He had his gear was a lot closer to USPSA, but still not USPSA. He had some military training, so like more tactical training. And then I had another gentleman who had only shot 5 matches. And he just, you know, he had some local training, but, you know, signed up for the class and wanted to kind of get to the next level there. So, but the reason I'm making this video is because you don't really realize how much you don't know as a coach until, well, I guess when I first started, I didn't know what I didn't know. So during this class, I'm looking at these students and going, wow, like I would have never thought of any of the things that I told them in class, ever. Like they would have never been things that I would have thought of to think about in my training or worry about in my shooting. And you know, not every class is exactly the same, obviously, because the students dictate my class in many ways. So depending on, you know, I have drills that I have that are very specific, that I have to get done, that are just giant things in our sport. Like they're massive things in our sport that you have to do. So transitions, you know, fundamentals, things like that. There's all that stuff is so important to have. So I always go over those things. And this class had quite a few people. Obviously, I talked about the 3 newer shooters that needed a little bit more grip work and had to go over that a little bit longer than usual, which honestly really didn't take that much longer, but I had to focus on them just a little bit longer than I would have on my normal classes. And as we progressed, you know, they progressed, and it became easier and easier for them to just hold on to the things that I had taught them before, because the way I coach and the way I focus on things is everything builds on top of each other. There's never a just, you know, all right, today we're going to stand like this, the next drill we're going to stand like this. No, everything goes from the base and works its way up. And it's always repeated over and over and over again. And the drills that we do, and in shooting, in this sport especially, you just repeat the same thing over and over again, but you have to prioritize it a little bit differently depending on what the situation is. So as I'm talking to these students and we're going through the class, I'm realizing that sometimes when I'm speaking about things, that some of the students are like, huh, I don't know what that is, or I've never heard of that, or what that means, or that term. Or, you know, we make things up in our sport here and have terms for things that, you know, outside of the sport isn't something that we talk about. So it's really great to kind of see the deer in the headlights and then go, got it, right? And they look at you like, oh, okay, I got it. All right, now cool. So like, I'll give you a good example. One of my students, Adam, I would say something to him and he wouldn't understand it, right? Which is fine. That, you know, that's kind of why you come to a class, because you're learning new things. So I tried a couple different ways to get it through, and I couldn't hit, you know, what he needed. And I asked him, I said, all right, well, you tell me, like, what do you need to remember this before you come up to this scenario or situation to remember that's important, right? And all we're looking for was verbiage, right? We're looking for that trigger word, right? That Like, so for me, I call my entry a crash, right? And I always talk about vision and looking down and find that spot. And I was like, you're looking for that spot. You're looking to hit that spot. You look at your eyes, use your vision, boom, look at the spot, hit the spot. That's where you're gonna crash, and you're gonna enter on that position, enter shooting in. So all that was fine, he understood all of that, but for some reason, the crash didn't work for him. That sound or that word was not his word. So once I asked him, okay, what do you think, what's the first word that kind of comes to your mind about this position here? And he was like, that's my target. I was like, that's perfect. Like, you can't get any easier than that, right? His target. So again, it's not that he couldn't do it. It's not that it was too difficult. It was that he needed it to work for him, right? And I think that's the hardest part of our job as a coach, is you're just trying to find a way to connect to that student. So this all comes down to, being new. So when you see a new student, you have to understand, I was there at some point in my life. I was there as a shooter. I was probably a little more advanced than most people because I was just always athletic. I'd done a sport that kind of fits this with paintball. So it was very similar, and kind of the athleticism and the moving around and the stage planning kind of thing kind of fit what I love to do anyway. But as we went through, there was another situation that he had, and it was pretty cool. And it kind of made me realize, like, you're always looking for analogies or trigger words that, or things that the shooters can relate to as a coach, in this sport especially. So for me, he was really struggling with some of the military training that he had where, always keep your eye up on the target, which I'm not even gonna get into whether I agree or disagree with that, because when you're trying to put bullets in the gun, if you miss that, you're probably gonna lose that gunfight, just so you know. But so when he's trying to reload, he needed to reload immediately to get onto another target so he could start moving and shooting on it. Well, he immediately would look at the target, at least 4 or 5 times in a row. And he just couldn't lock his brain in onto looking at the gun, looking at the magazine, and putting them together immediately, and then look at the next target. So we started talking. I was like, all right, man, you need to yell reload, yell it out, reload. Yell the word reload out to yourself, out loud, so you can hear that word. You need to be super hyper focused at this moment, because this is the one thing you're not getting, right? He's not able to subconsciously lock it in yet. New shooter, you're not going to be able to subconsciously lock just about anything in it when you're a brand new shooter, because you don't have a process yet. So as he runs through this next stage, he yells out reload, and he still does it. So we go back and I go, all right, man, that didn't work. What do you need to look at? What do you need to say? So he's like, all right, well, tell me what I need to do exactly. What is my goal here? I was like, you need to look at the gun, you need to look at the magazine, and you need to put them together. And I was like, so basically, put your both hands together and put them in front of your face so you can see it. And he looked at me and he said, all right, I'm gonna say hands this time. That was the trigger word he needed. So he used the word hands for the rest of the day and didn't miss a single reload. And actually I shouldn't say that, because at the very end of the class, I always make my students coach themselves. So before we're done, I make them run the stage and come back and give me a report of their hits, what their accuracy was, where they made mistakes, where they did great. So I want them to be able to feel that stage plan before they leave the day. On the last day, they should be able to start coaching themselves and feeling and understanding those mistakes. So he comes to me and he's giving me the walkthrough and he goes, man, I reloaded late. I never said hands. I never looked at my hands. I just looked up, ran, and as soon as I said hands and I realized it, I was already halfway there. But when I did hands, I had a great reload. So it was like he needed that word to get in there for him to see it or feel it. And it was just one of those things where when you, as a shooter, at my level that I've been shooting now for 5 years, I realized so quickly in this class what you don't know when you first start shooting. And I wish I would have taken a class when I first started, because it just would have really, really changed the way I shot immediately. I would have made a lot less mistakes. I would have started to realize what the priority was to train. God, I would have saved a lot of money. But it was really, really cool to kind of watch the new shooters come to my class and really crush it. Last story, because I can't forget her. She's important for me because it was one of my favorite moments in class. So Olivia, the girl that came to the class that shot, she had a carry gun, and she shot a carry gun the whole class, right? It was oh man, it was a Glock version of a Glock. It wasn't a Glock, maybe a Shadow Systems. I don't know. It was definitely not a Glock, but it had all the Glock, everything that went with it. So she's shooting that during the class, and it's just, man, it is a tough gun to hold on to. I picked it up because I wanted to check the sights, make sure everything was accurate for her. And that was a tough gun to hold on to, right? And I shoot a lot, so she was really struggling with her accuracy during the stage. And of course, you know, I'm pushing her to be, I don't ever treat anybody in my class like a D-class shooter or a new shooter. Everybody's treated exactly the same. You get the same drills that everybody else gets. You get the same concept everybody else gets, because in my opinion, there is no such thing as levels. You might be at a specific level, but I am not gonna coach you at that level. If I coach down to you, if I coach you to be a D-class or a C-class shooter, you're probably gonna be a C-class shooter for a long time. So I train you like a GM, okay? You might not be as fast as me, you're not supposed to be, but you will be. The goal is to get you to train like me and understand the things that are important. Obviously working from fundamentals up. I don't just have you start running on targets, but working from fundamentals up and get you to understand that these are the things that you will eventually have to start training. I'm trying to give you basically a training program when you come to the class. So Olivia comes in and she shot, it was on day 2 by the time we got there. She was doing pretty good on day 1 with her grip. We worked on that a lot. We kind of really focused on a lot of the fundamentals. She wasn't squeezing hard with her left hand. Again, tough gun to hold on to. She's not the biggest girl in the world, that's for sure. She's a pretty petite little girl. I think she's only like 19, 20 years old, something like that. And so she, you know, just learning how to shoot. Well, as we go, we get into the next part of the class and it's on day 2. And I had her change her stage plan. I didn't want her moving and shooting. I wanted her to run up to a spot and shoot things because I wanted her to understand the fundamentals of the game. And what she needed to do was be focusing more on the fundamentals of the gun than she did on the fundamentals of, you know, running a stage fast. So as we go through, we get to the last, like one of the middle of the day, we're running a stage and she's just missing. So I'm like, all right, cool, guys, we're out of break time, finished lunch. Came out of lunch and I said, all right, you guys walk the stage, get ready. I'm gonna go over here for a few minutes. You guys can run the stage if you want a little bit. I'm gonna go over here with her and we're gonna work on some fundamental stuff. Within 5 minutes, it's crazy. Within 5 minutes, I had her grip completely fixed and figured out because I was able to spend just an extra few minutes with her, and she's crushing 20-yard steel with irons, by the way. I'd like to point that out. She was shooting irons because if she had a red dot, it'd probably be a lot easier to get away with bad fundamentals. But she's crushing irons now at 20 yards on steel, and her face when we worked out her grip issues was probably the greatest moment of any class I've ever had. She just looked at me and was like, that is so much better. And I'm like, dude, the internal like little kid in me was like so excited, jumping up, doing backflips. And it's a great feeling as a coach to know that your student just hit a home run, right? And you help them get there. It's a pretty cool feeling, but it always brings me back to realize, like, man, what did I not know when I started, and how does it feel to be that student? It's always crazy to feel like that student and go, man, it's like a deer in the headlights when you first come, especially my class, because my level 1 class is not a basics new guy class. It can be, but most people that come see me are ready to go and we're ready to rip. So it's kind of interesting how I was able to separate and not force her to do all that crazy running and moving and shooting stuff and still make her fit in the class and feel part of the class. So it was really cool. All right, guys, if you have any questions, hit me up in those comments and I'll see you on the range.